Double D podcast with the unfiltered voice. Current events spilling like the wine.
Happy Wednesday morning, September 4th. This is Dave and Dustin on the Double D podcast presented by the investor lender Fidus Fi. A little quip about us. If you're looking for any fixed income, either you're retired or you just want an extra little investment in your portfolio, we love to help you paying double-digit returns. And so we actually finance construction for short-term loans for builders, landlords, rehabbers, and then for investors as well. We provide, like I mentioned, fixed income returns. So let us know. But Dustin, I'm excited for today's podcast. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, welcome everybody to episode 5. We're here.
Four, 5.
This is 5.
Okay.
So, Dave, we're gonna focus today on college football. We'll see where it goes, but if we don't get too frustrated with,
well, no promises.
So, Dave, let's start off with some of your reactions to the first couple weeks here.
Well, as a lifelong Gator and alum and all that good stuff, pretty deflating first game against Miami. Couldn't have been a worse performance. So that certainly is not a very bad taste in my mouth right now. So hopefully the rest of the year we can get that flushed out. But Miami does look good. So that's that.
Best team in Florida right now?
Best team in Florida. Speaking of that, my wife's a Seminole, so she's not had the best 2 weeks either. So we'll leave that one there. That one's certainly surprising to say the least. I did expect the Seminoles to have a drop-off. I don't think quite this drop-off, to the two teams they've played, but that just kind of shows you polls are just the polls. Preseason polls mean absolutely nothing. I mean, look at USC. Now they're getting picked to win the Big Ten and national championship, and a couple of years ago they, couldn't even get a first down.
So much hype on USC.
There is.
So, I'm not on that bandwagon.
Well, okay. Speaking of that, we were talking about this offline. Is that Miami gets hyped every year, and maybe this year, granted we're one game in against a very depleted, I guess, Gator team, at least from what I thought they were going to be. The Miami hype train has already started, but I feel like it always happens with Texas, certainly Georgia, but of course Georgia's now earning that, as is Texas, but USC as well. So it's a very hype train feeling year, right? And tell us a little bit about your Notre Dame.
Well, first of all, I want to put on the record that UCF is the best team in Florida. But speaking of Notre Dame, I'm not pumped on this new offensive coordinator. I thought we were kind of out of the Tommy Rees era of very predictable play calling, and we are not out of that era. We were so predictable against Texas A&M. I don't know if we couldn't hear the play calls coming in from us needing to hear each other with 107,000 fans from Texas A&M screaming the 12th man. But I just thought the entire game, you knew what was going to happen before, and certainly the defense knew. So the offense was so terrible for Notre Dame. But the run game is looking good. Love is an NFL prospect. Offensive line, right side looking pretty good. Left side, it's got some work.
That's game 1.
Yeah. And then I love our middle linebacker, and he just didn't show up. He wasn't reading, he wasn't reading it right, and we just let him through. So got some things to fix, but if I can call him out, certainly I think some of the best coaches in college football can help him redirect some things.
And it's much more fun, I'm sure, for the guys in the practice field to be fixing things after a win, right, in a hostile environment than after a loss. So I'd rather be Notre Dame right now than UF licking their wounds with, you lose that confidence after that first week. So at least Notre Dame got out of there with a win, right?
Yeah,
against a good team.
I think their schedule this year finally isn't one of the toughest schedules in college football. So unfortunately, your boys.
That moniker belongs to the Gators.
Yeah,
perfect.
Second would be Georgia. I think. I think the SEC is the real deal this year. I think last year. I might get a little shade for this, but last year's SEC was not impressive. I think the Pac-12, now what are they, the Pair 2?
Pair 2.
But I think last year Pac-12, Big Ten for sure, obviously, with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. The Big Ten was tough last year.
I agree with you. I think the Big 12 and the Pac-12, RIP, were great last year and definitely the most competitive and probably most fun to watch.
I didn't even say Big 12, but they were also, I mean,
Big 12 was
probably
great.
even possibly equal with the SEC last year.
Yeah, SEC did have a down year.
Not impressed.
No. Got a lot of returning quarterbacks this year, so I think it'll be a good year for SEC all around. But the post-Saban era has begun, so it's anybody's game now.
Oh God, I want to cut to our Saban video pretty soon, but another thing that just is a gripe of mine all the time with college football is the SEC. Like, what conference all roots for each other? Like, you guys are the only conference that just there's no Big Ten team that roots for each other. Like, Penn State hopes Michigan loses every game. They hope Ohio State loses every game. Like, there's no the SEC. Like, there's just
Yeah, I mean that's a fair question. Actually, my wife always asks me. She's like, I don't understand. I don't get it. She's like, I actually don't like that. I'm like, yeah, I will say it's more fun rooting for the other rest of the conference when you're doing well in the conference. Like, oh yeah, let's root for Kentucky to win. I'm winning the SEC, so who cares if they win? If you're a bottom feeder, you probably aren't rooting as hard for Georgia, Alabama, you know what I mean, to win, especially if they're really good year to year. But I agree, it is the only conference that happens. So I don't really know when that started. I mean, I was actually in school because I will say the Gators are the ones that started sort of the ring of SEC, the run of SEC championships back in 2006. And prior to that, really SEC really wasn't on the map anywhere like it is now, right? I mean, you think prior to that it was Texas beating USC. Then the USC had a couple great years. LSU did win in 2003. Auburn was good in 2004. But prior to that, it was more Big Ten focused. Obviously Florida State was good in the 90s as well. And then, in the 2000s. And then, it wasn't as SEC driven, SEC kind of heavy, I guess you could say. And it really started in 2006.
U of M, Miami, and Notre Dame?
Well, yeah. I mean, okay. Yes. I mean, I could talk about 10 teams. I'm just saying, there was all these other schools, like I said, that were great.
You do have to
Oklahoma
go back a
was
little
great
ways
as well. A little ways from Notre Dame. But, I think Alabama was down for a long time until Saban. I mean, a lot of years they weren't very good. And so it was just more open-ended. And then now it became 2006 and on very SEC heavy. And so I think that's when that kind of pride started.
There they go. They're just still supporting each other. David can't help himself. He's just full SEC.
I think you just do it.
When are we going to get rid of the conferences? Do we need them anymore, Dave?
Well, it is coast to coast, so the names are irrelevant. The numbers, when
are the conferences
are irrelevant. So it is kind of sad to see some of that regionality, or a lot of the regionality, lost.
Because you're flying to every game anyways. Half the teams are flying, so what's the difference?
I was reading something they were saying, who knew when you went to Stanford that you were going to end up playing, Miami in a game or something like that. I'm like, yeah, or like you go out to USC and you end up flying to Rutgers for a game.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I agree with you. I think I am surprised, kind of getting into the playoff conversation or I'm not surprised, but I think for player safety, and I say that with air quotes, you would think they would get rid of these conference championship games a little bit because there aren't divisions anymore. You're playing a difficult schedule. And then if you get into the playoff, you're either playing 3 or 4 more games. Because I remember a couple years ago, it was all about player safety and, getting home for Christmas and finishing your exams and all this stuff. And now they're literally playing from August 24th, right? That was week 0 when FSU played in Dublin, to I think January 21st, I want to say, is the championship. So we're at 5 months now of games, and so it's not about player safety anymore. Let's just throw that off the table, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, now you can make money in college football with all the NIL deals. So I want to play a little snippet here of
speaking of money.
Yeah, so Texas with an NIL deal with Lamborghini, which is just So is there any NIL money, Dave?
Maybe a little bit floating out there.
Notre Dame needs to deal with Rolls. Gotta put these guys to shame. Too bad there aren't any Rolls Royce in South Bend. Yeah, so I mean, if you're Arch Manning, are you gonna stay at Texas? Or are you gonna develop at a school? Are you gonna play under somebody? Are you transferring out? Because you're.
Yeah, I think it definitely will give guys more pause. Let's just take Arch out of it for a second. He's kind of the anomaly. Your average guy that's really good, right? That's maybe just didn't win the starting job, and you're getting some NIL money, but you're getting recruited, let's say, the end of that season to somewhere else to start and getting a lot of NIL money, and you're kind of thinking, well, why not? You know what I mean? Like you're not as loyal to maybe that school. Whereas Arch Manning, obviously coming from a football background, a little bit of an anomaly. But yeah, I mean, he's waited now. This will be 2 years at Texas. I know he got some NIL money, and they've got some Lamborghinis here, which certainly helps to stay. But it's almost like it might counter that decision to like, I'm just going to leave and go somewhere else. Because it's like, well, if I can get NIL money here, still develop.
Not get
maybe
injured.
I don't play as much, but I don't get injured, and I'm still going to be an NFL prospect. Like
if you're a Manning, you're
Yeah.
thinking long term, right?
Yeah,
you're
sure.
thinking, let's develop, let's get into the NFL. We just need to have a good junior, senior.
Because, I mean,
redshirt
we look
year.
at like the transfer portal. It's gotten absurd where it's like, we were talking about this offline too. It's like NFL. I don't even know where people are playing anymore. And I used to keep a pretty good tab on it. Like it's, quarterbacks are going
I feel like a
places
bad
just
fan.
for 1 year. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we were sitting watching Notre Dame game in Chicago over the weekend, and somebody asked me like, "Oh, who's this?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And I never not knew.
Right.
Like I always knew everybody, but I was like, let me check because I don't know.
Definitely a different world with the NIL and transfer portals. And, you got most guys that it seems like if they didn't transfer, that's like, whoa, that's really weird. This guy never transferred. And then now it's guy transferred twice.
Well, I think the kids from North Dakota State that didn't transfer, and the kids from, what is this school? I'm losing it right there. But there's a couple kids that it's a quarterback, wide receiver, that didn't transfer, and they play Colorado. It's Colorado State's quarterback and wide receiver didn't transfer out. Both had a lot of offers. Not as much NIL money to stay there, but. So you have some that are going to stay, support the program, develop themselves. They have friends there, they have family nearby. They're like, hey, I'm maybe not going to the NFL. I might, but they're sticking with their life plan.
Sure.
But for the guys that are thinking to go to the NFL, it's just kind of there's no loyalty.
Yeah, I know, and that's unfortunate because that's kind of what we all love about college football is it's not like the NFL. There is loyalty, and there's kind of you grew up this fan, this you know what I mean, and the in-state rivalries and different things like that. And like you said, with some of these conferences getting so big as far as number of teams and also the distances, you kind of lose some of those natural rivalries, which is sad too. But what are your thoughts on what these teams, and not just specifically Notre Dame, but other teams as far as when they're looking at scheduling, right? Now you have a 12-team playoff. What's your motivation though to go out and play a really difficult out-of-conference schedule when nowadays, if you have 2 losses in a Power 4, right, because we're only Power 4 conferences, you're probably in that playoff. Probably.
If you're SEC,
If you're
with
SEC, you're 100% in.
2 losses,
And
you're
you're maybe
probably
even
in.
3, depending on your schedule.
No,
Sad to say it, but
no.
I'm just saying.
No, the
You
whole
know what I
point
mean,
of
though?
the
But it
expansion
honestly-
is to put away the 3-loss teams that are not going to.
Yeah, I don't know.
They go again with the SEC.
Well, here's an example. Last year, I believe LSU finished 13th in the final polls, and they were 9-3. I'm just saying they were close. That'd be the first person out this year. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, it has to a lot of things have to shake out. But it almost thinks like why. And this speaking as a Gator fan with the number 1 schedule in the country, of course, this year. It's usually at worst, it's like 3 every year. It's never not top 5. It seems like.
Speaking of
why
which-
would we continue to schedule Miami, right? UCF, we got this later this year, right? We always have FSU
At home, though. That helps.
at home, but I mean, yes, it should. But I'm just saying, like, what would be the reason to continue doing this? Because I love those big neutral sites.
Speaking of
especially
which,
games.
Vegas is 4.5 for the Gators. Are you over or
It's 4.5
under
right now.
on the season?
I need to see. Oh, okay.
4.5 wins.
Right this second. This is not the good time to ask me, but I'm probably under. Sadly.
Oh, I have them over.
I've got to see a few more.
I have some
games.
faith in the coaching there. I think that there's so much talent across teams these days. So I think that the staff there will pull them through.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take a little moment here and talk about this video here with Saban. Even as an Irish fan, I can admit he is the GOAT coach. his reaction to Pat McAfee here. The man does not look amused. He's like, I don't know if I like this guy next to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's just Saban being Saban. You know what I mean? He's got this different gig, and he's taking it just as seriously as he did coaching.
Dude, the man is all business. I love it. I love it. And McAfee, like we were talking about him too, like before the show, like his trajectory in life, like kind of bringing us to like back to episode 4 of our podcast. We're talking about, like taking chances, like going all the way, going all in. That Bruce Lee quote that we had on the show, and McAfee, like his story of like how he got to his first like college program, and then he was going to a smaller school. He was maybe not going to be known very well, and there was a training camp down in Miami, I believe. And in order for him to get there, he had to go, and he either borrowed money or like used all of his money to play in like an overnight poker game.
Wow.
Wins the poker game. And then flies himself. He's a working class family. He asked his dad for the money. He's like afraid to ask his dad for the money. You can hear his story, and like it's gripping. Like you watch him tell the story, and you're just like locked in, like listening to the story, because it's such an amazing story of like how his trajectory of like his career path like got launched. And he goes to this training camp, gets recruited. He goes to West Virginia, and plays football there. And like so he goes to a D1 program, and then makes it to the NFL. And now he's like a huge commentator, has his own show on ESPN. The man's killing it.
Yeah.
His dance moves are terrible, as you can see by Saban's reactions. He's just not impressed.
I think he just kind of owns being that outlandish, kind of crazy guy. You know what I mean?
You see the buckle
persona.
and the
Like he's owned it.
little Texas tie there. I mean, the man's killing it. But.
Yeah. Love him or hate him, he gets ratings. That's what ESPN pays him. $50 million or whatever it is per year.
Yeah, after the podcast goes, we're live right now, but after it gets posted, and by the way, subscribe and like, appreciate that. When it's live though, I think I'll post that story in the comments, because I think everybody should watch that. That is an amazing story of how he got to where he's at. So after I get the screen back up here in a second.
Well, like you said too, like that one decision, changed his whole trajectory of his life.
Yeah, he literally went
crazy.
all in.
Yeah.
Like in the literal form. I know that's really cliche to say that, but he literally went all in.
Yeah.
And so I also want to play this too. I saw this just a little bit ago, but we're talking about, how the college football playoff like really favors Notre Dame. So not having a conference championship and getting if you have a good season, which they have a schedule to have a good season this year, if they can figure out how to make play calling happen, then you get into a easier home game at home, and then you get into a situation where you're going to play another low seed team, like you're going to play a Liberty or somebody that just got in, and you have an easier path as the Irish.
Yeah, I mean, it's arguably. So, okay, just to clarify, obviously they can't make the top 4 in the playoff, even if they're the number 1 team throughout the year. The best they can do is 5th.
And let's hold on that, because I think that people don't understand when they see these projections of like where the teams are going to line up. People are like, oh, there's no way that this is the top 4. But it's not that. The way the college football playoff works now is like you were saying, and I don't think everybody realizes that the top 4 are just the seeds from the Power 4 conferences. So they have that advantage of they're going to get a bye week. They're going to be rested. They're going to be, healing injuries. But if you're from the Power 4, you're going to get the top 4 seeds no matter what. That's kind of locked in, right?
The conference champ of each of those 4 get those top 4 seeds. We don't know what order, obviously, yet, but, probably based on whatever the polls were, similar to what the actual polls were in the rankings. But yes, if you're a champion of one of those 4, you're getting one of those 4 seeds for sure.
And so Notre Dame not going to get a top 4 seed, even going undefeated, right?
Correct. But
going to get an easier home game.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, it's still about entertainment and it's about money too, right? So they're going to get, let's say they're the 5 seed, right? So they're going to get a home game against probably the last team in, right? Let's say the 5-12. in South Bend, December 20th. So it might be a little bit chilly, / freezing, right? And so that's a big advantage.
The mums will be dead by then on the sidelines.
And also, but like you said, though, that's true. Also, like you said, they didn't play the weekend, 2 weeks ago in the conference championship either.
Also
so they
rested.
avoided the other 4 conferences have to go play the second best team in their conference, usually again, right? Just to get that. So when you think about that, they got an off week. They didn't play the second best team in their conference since they're not in a conference. Now they're getting a home game against probably let's say one of the last few teams in the playoff. I think Notre Dame did a pretty good job of negotiating as usual.
Well, you have a former athletic director on one of the committee seats that put together this whole thing. So as unfair as that is, as unfair as having the Notre Dame broadcast channel for your NBC, which may be expiring soon. Hey, let's put this up on the screen and watch this little quick video. We may skip a little bit of it because it's 3 minutes here, but I think this is an interesting synopsis here. And will you volume us up real quick?
Any of this, so no more divisions in the Big Ten and the SEC. Mm-hmm. And that's because the standings of the college football playoffs with the Big Ten and the SEC. So Notre Dame can't be higher than 5 at the end of the year, right?
That's right.
Okay. But
they could be ranked higher, but they're only going to be the 5 seed. That's the best they can do.
So they could be undefeated, but be the 5th seed in the playoffs.
Correct.
So that's just like we were saying, like that they're going to be in if they get in, and they go undefeated, which we don't necessarily think is going to happen, but let's just say that did occur. Not going to be better than 5.
Well, you also think it's kind of an advantage. They know 100% if we get in, we're playing that weekend.
Yeah.
Right? Like no matter what, you're playing, whether it's home or not, depending on your seeding. So that's you can kind of plan for that. So
yeah,
you're not playing
physically.
conference championship, but you're playing that weekend.
Yeah.
Correct. And it's there's so much.
Are they putting pressure on them to join a conference by doing this?
No, actually, it's the other way around. So their old AD, Jack Swarbrick, helped design this format, and it's basically set up now where if Notre Dame.
Well, he's literally like he's putting the cards on the table. He's letting them know what we said.
Yeah.
Team goes 10-2 in most years, they're gonna make the playoff. And for them, they're like, you know what? That's good enough for us. Because if you're in a conference, you have to play a conference championship game. So it's essentially like playing a super first-round playoff game against maybe an even better team than you would have played. So Jack Swarbrick, the old AD at Notre Dame, just wired this thing for the Irish.
Okay, let's say you win the Big Ten. Are you the 4th seed? Like, how does it work between the SEC and the Big Ten of if you win the conference?
If you win the conference, you can be one of the top 4 seeds. So, like, we're assuming, we don't know, because, like, the ACC could have a great champ who's undefeated, but more than likely, your SEC or your Big Ten champ, that's 1 and 2. Then, the 3 and 4 seeds also have to be conference champs. So, like, let's say Florida State wins the ACC, and they're your 3 seed.
Oh, I don't know if that aged real well.
Did not age well.
All right, we might get cut off here because our director here is a big Knowles fan, so I don't want to say too much. But that was I think we're not even live
As a
anymore.
Gator, I'm not talking though. Kyle, I promise I'm not talking any crap.
Well, what if, I don't know, Kansas State or Utah wins the Big 12, but they're like the 11th best team in the country? Doesn't matter. They're the 4th seed. Welcome to college football in 2024.
Okay. See, that's why I'm having you on, because I know we don't have college football for 3 weeks, so I almost need 3 weeks as the primer to get ready for this madness.
Dan, it's going to slap everybody in the face, especially like those of us who are not the complete sickos like me, who just live this 365 days a year. The folks who have been watching the Olympics and they're like, okay, canoe slalom's over. Let's check out college football. They're going to be like, what the hell is this?
Why are schedules going to matter more in the SEC? All conferences here, but
the divisions are gone. So what you're used to, were like Georgia wins the SEC East every year. Well, there is no SEC East now. So Georgia, maybe the best program in the SEC the last few years, got the unlucky draw. They've got to go to Alabama, to Texas, and to Ole Miss, which is just brutal. Texas, meanwhile, first year in the SEC, you think, okay, let's haze the new guy. Nope. They got a pretty easy draw. Meanwhile, Oklahoma, the other new guy in the SEC, their schedule just sucks. Like Tennessee comes to them, they have to go to Auburn the following week. Their last 2 weeks of the season are Alabama comes to them, and then they go to LSU.
Correct me if I'm.
And I think that is like a huge point too. Like people don't talk about how like, strength of schedule obviously matters and everything, but like schedule being like so many away games for Georgia this year. Like that is going to be so tough.
It is. A lot of years the schedule works out for them, but you're right. This year they're getting it. Just to note, the Mighty Gators are also traveling to Texas, so they should be shaking in their boots as well. But yeah, right. Georgia's going to earn it this year for sure. At Alabama, at LSU, at Texas. So it's going to be an exciting year. I don't know if after my week 1, I don't know if it's going to be good for my own team, but it's always fun to watch it for sure.
Well, we got a lot more college football coming up on the podcast. We'll be talking some business and some shenanigans of other topics, politics, the economy, the election. We're kind of going to not limit it here. We'll have some good guest speakers on in future episodes. So I hope you guys tune in and, listen to more of us ranting about college football and everything else.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.
Alrighty.